Welcome to the Parkland Report. I'm Stephanie Stewart, Vice President for Communications and External Affairs here at Parkland College, and the Parkland Report is the show where we talk to people making things happen here at the college. Today I have two very special guests, and they are Dr. Ramage, President of Parkland, and Dr. Pamela Lau, our Executive Vice President and President Designee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So we have a transition underway. It's been a couple of years in the making.
Really?
Yes.
And if our viewers are not caught up on the transition plan, Dr. Ramage, could you kind of catch us up on what's occurring right now at the college?
Well, it seems like the longest transition plan in history, probably because COVID happened in the middle of it, and that made everything feel like it was 10 times longer than it actually was. But it was actually a short period of time ago that we discussed, well, I guess I discussed with the board first that I was planning on exiting the institution at some point here, and that date has turned out to be December of 2022, December 22nd to be exact, of 2022, which is, it was a good time for me to leave. I'd been at Parkland for, I'll have been here for about almost 24 years and maybe 15 years total as president, and I'm getting old. And not that I have anything better to do, but it's time, you know when it's time. So I had a discussion with the trustees about my plans and suggested maybe that our wonderful process of looking within Parkland for leadership might be appropriate in this case. And in fact, we had a very good possibility amongst several possibilities in our senior administrative ranks, and that was Dr. Lau. So we put her name on the table, and the trustees talked amongst themselves in a very short period of time, with I think a confirming interview of sorts happened in that period of time, and the trustees announced both my retirement date and plans at the same time as Dr. Lau's ascendancy as president designee come January of 2023. And it's been magical since then. All the way through COVID, everything's been perfect. We managed that without any hiccups whatsoever, because obviously there's two of us to put our heads together about those sorts of decisions now. So it's been a long run up to a great decision and a great culmination of my time, at least in my opinion, and a bright future for Dr. Lau.
Excellent summary.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. And so, Dr. Lau, can you share a little bit with our viewers who may not know you as well as they know Dr. Ramage? We do this show every year, and I know we catch up on other topics, but the last, the tides are turning, right? And you're stepping into this new role. So do you want to share a little bit about your origin story at Parkland and kind of how you're stepping into this role now?
Well, Parkland has been my professional home for a long time. Started in '97 as a part-time faculty member teaching developmental reading. When I first came to Parkland, I was just looking for a job, something that will help pay the bills. I had no idea about community college. But coming in and finding both the professional welcome to train me as somebody who didn't know very much about community college, I did what they often say. I came and I drank the Kool-Aid, and I have stayed. Because the mission of Parkland College, which we know, right, is to engage the community in learning. That the ability for anyone who wants to have some benefit from higher education, that we have an open door access to them. And my introduction to Parkland through developmental ed has been very much an eye-opener of being able to help all students to succeed, and regardless of what their prior academic experience was. So that was how I started at Parkland. Came in as a part-time faculty member, became a full-time faculty member around the year 2000. And as I look back over the years, and we talk about leadership development, Parkland has been a place that has allowed me opportunities to grow, not too fast, just in time. But as I think back, every few years somebody will come along and say, there is a particular opportunity. Would you be interested in even thinking about it? And so I went from full-time faculty, I became a program director. And then when Dr. Ramage was Vice President for Academic Services, he asked me to chair a task force to look at the ways we deliver learning assistance across the college. And so we had the Coordinating Academic Support Task Force, And out of that, we created the Center for Academic Success, and I was the first director for CAS. It became known as CAS. So I was director of CAS for a while, and then I became Dean of Academic Services, and then interim vice president for academic services, and then the vice president, and then the opportunity came. So it's like every few years there is an opportunity that opens up. And so Parkland has been a place where I have gotten to know a lot of people. I know a lot of different areas in the college, and to be able to contribute to the mission of the college, that's been my growth and experience here.
So the moral of that story is if you do good work, people notice and they bring you along with them, because people who do good work are extraordinarily valuable to the organization and to the people who are trying to do interesting things. You get somebody who's got the skills and the interest and the competency, and it makes life wonderful.
And this has been an institution, I think, that people encourage that kind of a growth and opportunity. So even as what I was saying, there's no ordinary faculty member, but just as a beginning faculty member that looking for different ways to be creative about how we reach students. Everyone is a leader from where they are, and the opportunity to do that has been very much my experience.
Yeah, it's been interesting from my vantage point to see kind of the growth and development just over the last few years, and as this transition is taking place. Can you talk about your process of working together, right? So there's been this couple years transition, and there's some yet left to go. But how are you working together, one from the mentorship perspective, but then two from a collaborative decision-making perspective?
Sure. Well, the ideal situation is, perhaps from my perspective, or somebody in my perspective or in my position, the 3-year lead up is not ideal. That's a little bit too long. People who I talk to now out at events, now that we're having events again, say, so you retired like 3 years ago, right? And, well, no, not quite. I still have another 8 months to go. That's too much time, but there were circumstances that required that much lead up time. So that aside, I think institutionally it's been a great thing. So for faculty and staff to know when they did that there is a transition that's happening, but to know the full extent of that transition and what it looks like at the end, I think is invaluable. And I say that because we both, or all of us, have been contacted, including trustees, to talk to other institutions about how it was managed here and how did it work and what were the pitfalls and the positives of that sort of process. And I think largely it's been good for the institution and not terribly painful yet either for either one of us. Perhaps there's still time, pain in the future coming, but and Pam undersells her stuff. She needs very little from my perspective. I mean, there's details about order of events and or if there's a rule in place, a little bit of explanation about that anybody would need coming into a new process they haven't run before. But Pam's been around. She's been around here longer than I have, actually. And she knows Parkland, she knows our system, she knows our people, and that's 95% of the game. The rest is just procedural stuff, and she's well ahead of the game in terms of knowing that sort of stuff. So again, from my perspective, it's a joy to work with Pam. She gets it.
Well, Dr. Ramage is very kind. And 3 years is kind of long, but in many ways, as you look back, it's also been helpful because before stepping into the executive vice president position, I was vice president for academic services, so chief academic officer, and that oversees all of the instruction, the faculty and the teaching and learning that goes on. And so it also allowed me a time to actually look for someone to be able to hand off. So there are two sets of baton passing that has been going on, and I think part of the ideal out of this transition plan is to allow that stability stays while we are passing on the leadership responsibilities, so that our work can go on without great interruptions. When somebody new comes in, there's always a question of what that person will be like, Will they change things in a dramatic way? And we naturally ask those questions. But I think this transition plan has allowed our work to continue. And we all didn't know when we started, right, that we would have a pandemic to deal with. And I think part of, not that I appreciate the pandemic itself, but that because we were put into crisis mode and crisis management so that we can keep the operations of the college going on, it also allowed me a very different and unexpected opportunity to work very closely with all the vice presidents in all of that area so that we can see how things needed to be coordinated so we can move in the same direction for the sake of keeping our work as a college going. And so while we didn't plan for the pandemic, it has actually been a very important part of that transition.
Yeah, that actually leads into my next question, Pam, which is about, what is different about stepping from that vice president of academic services, like overseeing one sort of area of the college, but then starting to move into that president's role, that executive VP role, and then thinking about the future? What is different about that perspective or what have you learned in that process?
I
can't wait to hear the answer.
I guess I can use an idiomatic expression, right? The whole thing about getting into the weeds. Because I have actually grown up in the garden with the weeds and with the flowers and the plants, I tend naturally to go back in there. And so one of the big things about the transition is to learn when I don't have to deal with that because somebody else is taking care of that. But drawing upon the background of knowing what goes on there to look at the wider picture. And I think that's been very helpful. And I do a lot of watching to see what Dr. Ramage will say at certain points and say, oh, okay. He's able to look at it that way. And so it's been a very good time for me to learn to, in that sense, let the vice presidents who know their work to bring up recommendations and to see it from that particular level. That has been, I think, tremendous. And if we didn't have this time of overlap, I would have been thrown into a position, not really thrown into a position, but I would be put in a position without having learned that lesson of letting go and seeing things from a different perspective.
Yeah, that's an interesting answer. Yeah, I wasn't sure where she was going with that too. But
add on a little bit to that too. The relationship amongst the senior leadership, the vice president's group, for lack of a better word, is unusual. And you're one of them, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's not terribly common. It's not uncommon. But I think the relationship between that group, the members of that group, has a lot to do with somebody's success. The transition, the acceptance of maybe a change that's going to happen maybe a little bit later on. The process that we have in place for making those decisions is extraordinarily collaborative, and it's pretty, I hate to use the word transparent because it seems to be overused, but all the cards are on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know what the cards are, and we decide together how to play them and in what order and to what effect, and I think that's gigantic for not only the institution and the staff and the faculty, but the community and the students. You get the best thinking when you operate that way. And I think that's part of why this transition seems to be going so well, as we share that same philosophy.
yeah, just from my vantage point, I think looking toward the future, it's like that we're all collectively planning for the future, and there will be a handoff at some point, but we can look a couple years down the road and say, these are the plans we're making today. There won't be an abrupt start and stop at any one point, even though there will be a change that we're all sort of getting used to. And I know that our students will benefit from that, and our employees as well, in terms of a gradual transition instead of something more abrupt. Tom, a little bit from your perspective, the presidency is the way that it is now. The college has gone through COVID. We've overcome a lot of different challenges over the last couple of years. We've had enrollment challenges. Years ago, there was, the budget impasse that we've navigated. So in your tenure, from this perspective, what has changed? How has the college changed and evolved during that time?
Sure. Where to go from there? Early on, so I started as interim president in 2007, and naively back then, because I was naive back then, I thought, well, what I said to the folks is, hey, my entire career at Parkland I've spent focusing on the internal stuff, what's going on inside the institution. Mm-hmm. And that external stuff's kind of scary, and you really don't know what it's really all about until you're in it. And I think you probably could attest to that. Mm-hmm. But that unknown was daunting, and it's still daunting. Mm-hmm. What's changed is that I would tell you that 90% of what I do now is external, and very little of it is internal. And obviously, there's a situation that lends itself to that. But even 3 years before we got to the transition, that just naturally occurs. When you have good people, good leadership team, you don't need to worry about details, because those people take care of the details. And if you take that away from them, you lose something. Something doesn't work, things don't work as well as they should when you don't empower the people who are in the details to manage those details. So the transition from focusing internally to externally has happened naturally, and I'm far more comfortable with it today than I was in 2007. Dr. Lau will have that same, there's no way you can teach that or pass that along. You can say it's going to happen, but until you feel it, it's a little bit esoteric. The other things that have changed dramatically is in 2007 through 2012, we were in a growth period. We were growing like crazy. We had more students than we could find space for. We were out of faculty offices. We didn't have a classroom to spare. We were full up. And we started a building project. We just spent $92 million in building new facilities over maybe a 5 or 7 year period, anticipating that growth would continue. And all signs pointed toward continued growth. We were a great market, in a great market area. We were valuable in terms of the cost of going to college. At a community college, we were priced right. We were teaching the right things. We had great feedback from our university partners in terms of how our students did after they transferred. They did wonderfully. And our career and tech ed graduates were being hired before they could finish their program, which not great for us, but great for the students. Things were going swimmingly. And then this cliff hit, this demographic cliff, and this shift in terms of the number of people who were looking to go to college at a particular time, the number of 18-year-olds that were graduating from area high schools, not just in our community college district and not just in Illinois, but the entire United States. And it was predicted somewhat, but we're feeling it now. So after 8, 9, 10 years of this slow decline in enrollment, we've had to adjust. And you adjust in 2 different ways. You adjust financially, because there are less resources coming in, and you adjust physically in terms of the way you use the space and the number of employees you have. And that's less fun than growing. It just is. But we've managed that process with some hiccups, bumps in the roads. It's not been totally smooth, but I think we certainly tried to do the best job we had with the information we had, and I think today's financial position indicates that some good decisions were made.
Yes.
We're in a fine financial position as an institution, and I feel very good about that part of the handoff, that we're not passing on a $10 million deficit. Matter of fact, it's the opposite. There's a fairly good cushion right now that will serve the institution well over the next, say, 3 to 5 years.
Great. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break. I have some topics, and I want to pick up maybe where you left off after that break, so we'll be right back. All right, and we'll take a few moments for a break, and we'll return with Dr. Ramage and Dr. Lau.
It's your time to create the future you want at Parkland College. Time to explore your path among 100-plus degree and career programs. Time for a great education with tuition help, flexible classes, and transfer credits, making your time go further. Time to avoid crushing student debt. Parkland's half what you'd pay at universities. It's your time to do you. Enroll now at parkland.edu.
All right, welcome back from the break. We're here again with Dr. Ramage and Dr. Lau talking about transition plans, COVID response, plans for the future, everything and all of the above. And Dr. Ramage, you gave a good summary of really what's changed over the past 10 years, really kind of bringing us to the present moment. And one of the things that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years in particular has been the pandemic, but that's also brought some new supports for our students and relief funds to the institution. So Dr. Lau, can you share a little bit about what that's been like, all this, the funds and supports that have been coming our way and how we've actually put that to work for students?
So, teaching and learning is the heart of what we do as an academic institution. And while the pandemic caused us to have to rely on technology in a way that we were not prepared for, and that is not unique to Parkland, right? Higher ed and actually schools all over the country, we had to switch to online. We had to make adjustments. But with some of the help that we get through federal relief funds, we've actually, through the work of Dr. Nancy Sutton, really focused on using technology in a way that will help us with our teaching and learning even beyond the pandemic. So while the pandemic forced us to use technology in a way that we might not have been prepared for, yet we've learned some lessons from that. And so we've invested quite a bit in what we call flexible technology. And so to describe it in a nutshell is classroom teaching can go on in a face-to-face class. However, the technology is set up so that should a student not be able to come in for whatever reason, it could be COVID related, so you got to stay home and not come, or you have children that have to stay home because of COVID situations, or kids get sick, that a student can also tune into the class from home and not be counted absent, not to miss out on the learning that goes on. So to get the technology to be able to set up our classrooms so that faculty can teach in the way they want to, but then the student who's accessing it remotely can also benefit fully. That's one of the things that I think would be with us going forward. So not have we invested, but we are thinking too of, as a college as we go forward, that we are going to be, we are wanting to be able to serve students who are not your traditional student that can come to campus during the usual 8 to 5 hours and be here during the daytime. We are having a growing number of students who are part-time students, which means students have work responsibilities, family responsibilities, and things happen in life. And so even if you make the best arrangements to always be in class at certain times, it is not always possible. You can be called back to work for a different shift, somebody can get sick and different issues like that. So with the flexible technology, we believe that we will actually be able to extend our mission of engaging the community in learning to adjust to people with different kinds of work schedules so that everyone can take advantage of the learning opportunities here at Parkland, and that the faculty are actually learning different ways of using this technology so that they can keep the students engaged in learning.
Yeah, I've actually sat in on one of the flexible technology classes. I was observing one of our faculty members in communication, and she had several students. I almost didn't realize it in the room. It was mostly in person, but then I didn't realize that she was taking questions from Microsoft Teams, and it worked seamlessly, and you didn't even notice the technology. It was just, invisibly present.
We've been blessed. In 1998 is my first time here, and at that time, in online courses, technology-mediated instruction was just at its very beginning. And the faculty at Parkland in particular really embraced the challenge, the deep look at how this could be a tool that would be useful for the institution. And that's 2 generations of faculty ago. Those were mid-career people in 1998 that have passed on that same sort of tradition of embracing the technology and figuring out the best way to use it for what we were trying to do. And I think that's carried through our newest crop of faculty. Lots of new faces, but that same interest in learning and tweaking what is available technology-wise to our best advantage, to the students' best advantage, is a hallmark of Parkland and a hallmark of our faculty in particular.
Yes, I've always been impressed with how, with everything, you always start with sort of a smaller group of people who are interested. So like last summer, I think it was, if I get my dates right, that I think about 8 faculties gave some of their time in the summer to actually experiment with the different ways in which the technology can be used, and experimenting with faculty who teach different disciplines. So it could be automotive technology, it could be ag, it could be psychology, all different areas, and that they would not only experiment it, but then thinking in terms of how were they going to then spread their knowledge and their excitement to fellow faculty. And so being able to I sat in one of those sessions where people just came in and dropped in and how does this work, how would it work for my particular class. But the amount of sharing and mutual encouragement has been something that is invigorating to watch. And especially as we were trying to come out of the throes of the pandemic, trying to figure out how to bring back students, to re-engage them, because students were tired of just watching stuff on Zoom all the time, right? So that to feel that energy, I think is exciting. And like Dr. Ramage says, it's so very much part of Parkland, that this is why we say we have quality and excellence in teaching and learning.
Well, Dr. Lau, you mentioned quality, and so I would be remiss if I didn't bring up our upcoming site visit and self-study for the Higher Learning Commission that really focuses on quality of our institution and ensuring we're doing all of the things that we should be doing to give our students an outstanding experience and really meet that higher standard. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of accreditation and the process that we're going through right now?
So Parkland is accredited by the Higher Learning Commission. We often refer to the commission with the acronym HLC. So we are accredited by HLC, and every 10 years, HLC will come for what is called a site visit. We are in what we call the open pathway for accreditation. So it's a 10-year thing. At the 4th year, we have a mini self-study, and we have to send in a report, and then we get comments from reviewers to say these are the things you need to improve on, and then at the end of the 10 years they come again, and we are measured against 5 sets of criteria that have to do with mission, ethics and integrity, one on teaching and learning, how we do it, and then teaching and learning, how we assess ourselves to see whether how we can do better, and then the last one has to do with responsibility, finances and structures and resources. So we have been working for the past 2 years on a self-study. We are getting ready to finish up the writing of that self-study. We'll have a period where Parkland people will be able to read that and comment on it, and then we will revise that, and then we'll be posting that actually out on the public website, so that the public, the people in District 505, the community that we belong to, that people can then read that self-study and actually provide comments. And after that period, we will send it on to HLC, and in November, we expect to have a visit from HLC. They will send a team of reviewers, probably 5 to 7 reviewers will be here on site.
Dr. Ramage, you've been through this a couple of times. Why should the community care? Why should students care?
Well, it's a very big deal. I know it sounds sort of dry and boring to write all these 35,000 or so, maybe 40,000 words, and have this team come in, but it's critically important. The Higher Learning Commission and its counterparts across the country are really the stamp of quality. It's how the person at home can determine a quality higher education institution versus something that's not. And this is, you hear this in the news. This is some of the student debt that's been forgiven at the federal level. People who got sort of sucked into an institution that didn't have the same sorts of quality outcomes and structures and systems, and the degrees aren't worth much, to be quite honest. The Higher Learning Commission's stamp of approval is that guarantee, for lack of a better word, that the institution that you're going to meets these requirements that are not, the bar is not low. They're fairly significant to get over. But you can come to Parkland knowing that for almost all of our 50 years we've had that stamp of approval. This will be my third one. I was fairly junior when we started the first one, and I'll finish a month after this one starts or finishes. But Dr. Lau has been the chief architect of this last 10-year self-study, and will do wonderfully. You have a sense when you're going through this process how the institution's going to do, and where your soft spots are if you have any, and we're going to do wonderfully.
Yeah, this has been my first time going through the process, and it's been really illuminating for me, and also really encouraging just to see the collaborative effort in terms of writing and gathering evidence and really demonstrating that we're excellent and proving it.
Yes, it is a bit of an arduous process, right? That you have to write to these criteria, and each criteria has a lot of sub-points, and you really have to, it forces you to look inward and to ask yourself, have we been able to do this, and have we done it well? And I think that's very important. And one other thing about accreditation, the federal government uses accreditation as the basis for giving us the authority to disperse federal financial aid. So in addition to the standard and quality that has been set by the Higher Learning Commission, and it's a peer review approach to evaluation, without that stamp of accreditation, then we will not be able to serve students in terms of being able to help them with financial aid. So it's kind of a both and kind of a benefit that we have from doing
That's
this.
about, what, $16 million a year in financial aid that flows through the institution to our students. So again, huge economic impact.
Absolutely critical, for our future. I want to follow up on a prior, the theme of adaptability, and that our world has changed, and that Parkland continues to adapt and evolve along with those changing circumstances. And one of the things that's really come to the forefront of our national conversation, and of course here at Parkland and locally, are really the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know, Dr. Lau, you have an initiative underway to convene conversations on that. So can you tell our viewers about that effort and what the conversation has been like here at Parkland?
So sort of there are two things going on at the same time. One has to do with the advisory council that we set up. It goes by the acronym ACAD, Advisory Council for Accessibility, Inclusion, and Diversity. And this has been a council of leaders that we bring together once a month to basically talk about issues that pertain to helping all students achieve the outcomes that they have come to Parkland for, right? And to look at where we might be needing to shore up our efforts. We have started on this a few years ago, and I wanted to coordinate this at a higher level so that whether we're talking about teaching and learning in the classroom, whether we're talking about support services outside of the classroom, we can, as an institution, look broadly at what we're doing so that we can maintain the welcome that we want to give to students, but we also want to ensure that if we need to do things differently so that we can actually help students who are not doing so well achieve, that's an important thing. So one of the things that we do look at would be looking at even the success rates of students, right? And who might not be succeeding at the same rate as others, and then looking at what is it that we can do. We've always been a college that has been innovative, looking for ways to help students succeed, and this council, ACAD, has helped us to focus on some of those concerns. Then at the same time, we have a strategic plan for excellence, and it's a plan that the current plan ends in 2024. So we're coming up to the time where we have to look again at our plan. What are the things we need to focus on strategically? So this year, as part of a preparation for looking at that plan in 2023, so that we have a new plan when the current one expires, I have been conducting what I call listening tour sessions, where I invite up to 5 people at a time to just come talk to me about things that are on their mind. I have 3 kinds of questions that I ask people to be prepared to discuss. One is to actually look at what I call our mission, the students that we are serving. And we have really good discussions on who are the ones that we are serving, who are the ones that we are missing out on, who is not benefiting from the quality education that we provide and that we could be reaching out better to. And these could be students who come to Parkland but are missing out, as well as pockets of District 505 residents who are not coming in. Then we are also looking at ourselves as a community, the ones who are actually delivering the service of education, and asking ourselves, so what characterizes us as a community of educators, and what are the ways, what are we doing well, what are the things we're good at, what are the warts that we have and that we need to be paying attention to, some weaknesses and so it's been also a very good conversation of looking at ourselves and then also thinking about what I call journey. Here we are, how do we get to where we want to be? And this is an opportunity for everyone at the college to find time to come sit with me for an hour and talk, and it's truly a listening tour. And then as we come to the end of that, we'll be taking those conversations out to the community, the various stakeholders that we have that have worked with us, whether they're businesses, whether they're in K-12, other higher ed partners, thinking in terms of who we connect with out there so that we can bring education to our area. And we'll be seeking that same kind of input through listening to us for the external audience.
That's great. You're gathering lots of insights and ideas, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So just my final question probably for both of you, looking to the future and the journey, what do each of you envision for Parkland? Where should what should the community be looking for in the future from the college and knowing the evolving needs on the outside? Dr. Ramage?
Well, I think you've heard the theme already. I mean, we've talked about the Higher Learning Commission and that process of self-study and proving to an external body that what we do here actually matters, and that students, how do we know if students are learning? The ACAD committee looking at the diverse community that we serve, the listening tours that Pam's doing. It's all got the same theme. It's tell us how we're doing. Here's how we think we're doing. Tell us what we're doing well, what we need to improve on. That constant reinvention, that self-look at not only who we're serving, but how well we're serving that community is, I think, a theme that has been woven throughout Parkland's 55 years of history. And of course that's going to continue. And that's just maybe one component of it. There's the academic side where the programs that we offer are under constant reevaluation, both internally and externally, with the people who hire our graduates. And I think that I don't think we've invented a better way to keep Parkland more current than those activities that we just described, constantly evolving. Technology is a tool. It's all instruction. Technology is the tool by which we pass on that knowledge or that experience or that theory. That will constantly change as well. There'll be a next thing. Whether it's AI or Meta or whatever, whatever path you want to go down.
Can we get those?
Well, I just read it, and yes, absolutely. Not to go off that deep end.
I look forward to that.
But I think that the landscape is going to be more challenging in the future. It just has continued to get more challenging from a political standpoint, from a funding standpoint, and from a proving our value and worth to the community. Is a college education worth it? Is 2 years at Parkland and $171 a credit hour still the value that the community expects it to be? And I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that we prove to ourselves and to the community that it is a worthwhile investment to come and spend time at Parkland.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't have too much to add to that. I say, agree, right, yes, right. Because I think going forward, if I can think of what would the college be focusing on, I think one of the important things is student success, the retention of our students and helping them to get to whatever academic goal that they came in with, and with a particular eye on equity outcomes. We know who does well. We also know that there are pockets of students, a lot of us, our minority students don't do as well. And I think that one of the things going forward, we will be looking more closely at that and asking ourselves again, what are the things we used to do good at? What can we repeat? What new approaches do we need to take? And then looking for students who have not engaged with Parkland, who might have peeked into at our house but have not come in to enjoy what we can offer. And then thirdly, focusing again on this whole question of value. Do we offer value? Are we relevant to what's out there? And that always is that constant looking at ourselves, looking at what's outside, and how we can actually prepare students. Because the mission of a community college is to provide opportunities for the residents in their district to experience economic lift and social mobility. That's what we're here for, and that's what we'll continue doing.
Great note to end on. Thank you both for sharing a little bit about the transition, about what's going on now, and about the future. So I'm sure we'll be catching up with both of you again in the fall. So this is not the last time. All right, that's it for this edition of the Parkland Report. We appreciate your time and coming to learn a little bit more about the people making things happen at Parkland College.